All right, let's clarify what a mole of something is. A mole, spelled M-O-L, or moles, M-O-L-E-S, is a batch. It's just a collection of something. So remember, 1 dozen eggs, for example, is equal to 12 eggs. That is, a dozen of something is 12 of something. It's just a collection of 12, a batch of 12. So a mole, very similarly, is a collection. It means a collection of 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd, usually atoms. Okay. So when somebody says a mole of atoms, they mean this huge number, 6.022 times 10 to the 23. That's a mole of something. A mole is also the molecular weight from the periodic table. So what do I mean by that? Well, on the periodic table, let's take, for example, lithium on the left here. And you see lithium on the top, you've got the number 3. That's the number of protons. Remember, these top numbers are always the number of protons. And the lower number, in this case for lithium, Li, you've got 3 protons, and underneath 6.941. That 6.941 is the mass of 1 mole of lithium. So that's where this mass is coming from. So in this case, beryllium, Be, that says 9.012 underneath. That's the mass of 1 mole of lithium, of beryllium. So 9.012 grams of beryllium is the same as 6.0. It has 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. So when they talking about a mole of something, it could be either 1 mole. Let's go back to lithium. Could either be 6.94 grams of lithium, or it could be, they could say 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd lithium atoms. Exactly the same thing. So if they say to you, well, if I have 15 grams of lithium, how many moles in that? Well, in looking at lithium, which has a molecular weight of 6.941, so that number underneath the element symbol, the Li, that's the molecular weight. And that really means that number of grams is 1 mole. So again, 6.941 grams of lithium is 1 mole. 9.012 grams of beryllium is 1 mole. 24.305 grams of magnesium, Mg, is 1 mole of magnesium atoms. So a mole is equal to the molecular weight in grams below the element. So the number underneath the letters, that's 1 mole is that many grams. So let's work with, if we have 15 grams of lithium, how do we find out how many moles? Well, I've got grams on top. So in dimensional analysis, I always write the units first, the label. Do not write any numbers yet. I'm working with lithium, grams of lithium. All right, it's going to capitalize. I don't think I can stop that. So if I do that, I'll just accept it. All right, so grams of lithium to moles, that's my conversion. So grams on the bottom, moles on top, do my labels. So I see I've got 6.941 grams is the molecular weight of lithium. So I write 6.941 grams of lithium is 1 mole. So now I can cancel out the labels, grams and grams, and I just multiply and divide the numbers. 15 times 1 is 15, divided by 6.941. You put that on my calculator, and I get about, I get that equals, let me put a little text box here, 2.16 moles of lithium. Or you could just write it MOL. That's fine too. And how many atoms is that? Well, it's 2.16 moles. So how many atoms is that? So dimensional analysis, I know 1 mole is 6.022 atoms. So if I now have to start with the number of moles, not with grams. So 2.16 moles, let me get rid of this lines here. So 2.16 moles of lithium, that's what I have, right? Now down here, I have to go, how many, let me fix this, moles in, let's go to MOL, in the number of atoms. What's the conversion here? So in 1 mole, let me get rid of that 1 up there. What's the conversion from atom to moles? Well, I know that 1 mole is 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. I'm just going to copy that number. So 1 mole is 6.02 times 23rd. So 1 mole underneath That number on top, let me stretch it out a bit. So let me calculate that. So let me get rid of that extra atoms there. So I do this multiplication on top, 2.16 times 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd. Let me cross out my labels to make sure I'm left with atoms. Cross that one out. That cancels with the guy underneath. Those labels are gone. So let me do the calculation. 6.022. That equals 13.01. Actually, just three significant digits. 2.16 only has three numbers. Times 10 to the 23rd atoms. But I don't write scientific notation with the decimal this far over. It has to be the first digit has to have the decimal. So let me move the decimal one place, 1.30. Now that becomes 10 to the 24 moles. Atoms. So 2.16 moles of lithium is the same as 1.3 times 10 to the 24 atoms of lithium. Or 15 grams. These are all the same quantity. And I use this conversion, molecular weight, which in this case is 6.941, to 1 mole, 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. Now, if I'm working with a different element, if I want to know 15 grams of, I don't know, let's pick sodium. Now, sodium has a molecular weight of 22.998, so 15 grams would be less than 1 mole. In that case, if I did that, I would say, well, how many moles of sodium do I have in 23 grams? I would start fresh here. Let me delete all this stuff. So if I want to know how many moles of lithium, of sodium in 15 grams, take that same 15 grams number, and I would put grams on the bottom and moles on top. Now what do I do here? Get rid of that one, sorry. How many grams are in a mole of sodium? Go back to the periodic table, look at the molecular weight of sodium. It's 22.998 grams, 998 of sodium, Na, in 1 mole of sodium. It's a much heavier metal. And that turns out to be a small number. It's not 2.16. Let me get rid of all these numbers. When I do that value, what's 15 divided by 22.998? You get about 0.65 moles of sodium. So 15 grams of an element will always be a different number of moles because you're always going to divide by a different molecular weight. And what's the molecular weight? It's that number underneath the element, that mass underneath the element, right? And the molecular weight, remember, is just adding the number on top, 11, in this case, 11 protons, plus the number of neutrons. And you have to kind of round off the molecular weight. So sodium has a molecular weight of 22.98, and I know sodium has 11 protons. Well, how many neutrons does it have? Well, it has 11 protons, and it weighs 23 grams per mole, right? 23 grams per mole. That must mean it has 12 neutrons, because the other mass comes from the neutrons. It has to weigh 23. So, all right, hope that's all clear. See if you could find out the number of moles in 15 grams of beryllium. So the answer should be, see if you can calculate it. It should be, you should get about 1.66. See if you can calculate that. 15 grams of beryllium, how many moles do you get? It should be 1.66. Give it a shot.